Welcome everybody to Vintage Books Live. Tonight we're super excited to have another returning guest, Alison Cochrun, whose second book just came out. Gosh, was it last week?
Yep, just last Tuesday.
I'm like, oh yeah, it was only a few days ago. Feels like a long time. Probably feels like a longer time for you doing all
Yes.
the events. She writes rom-coms, I guess would be the category, and this is her second book. And so I'm just super excited to have her back. And I thought I would start this time by the same way we started last time, by just having you tell a little bit about the book. Before we do that, I'm going to turn my heater off so that the recording. There we go. So that we don't have this roar in the back of the recording the entire time. But yeah, just a little bit about book 2 and the story of it, I guess, a little bit. So people who haven't gotten a chance to read it yet know a little bit about what it's about.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Alison Cochrun. Yeah, as Christy said, I write rom-coms. I write specifically like queer romance books. So my first book was called The Charm Offensive, and it came out last year. And then my second book is called Kiss Her Once for Me. And it is a Christmas rom-com that is loosely based on the movie While You Were Asleep, starring Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman, but gay. And so it involves a woman who is very lonely at the holidays and quite desperate, and ends up in a like fake relationship with this man. Goes home to his family's house for the holidays and discovers that his sister is someone from her past.
That's a perfect summary for not giving anything away.
Nothing is given away. I mean, there's also just like
it's awesome.
holiday
No, it's
hygiene.
perfect because that's exactly what it's about, but you didn't give anything away. I was really curious, and now I can't read my notes. Just to have a little bit of a conversation, because I think a lot of people don't get to see, like, how the sauce is made and all that kind of stuff. And so I always like to kind of talk about that stuff. And I was really curious what the experience of writing a book that turned out to be really popular and that people really responded to, and then you're gonna sit down and write a second book. Now I realize that in the real world, like, right, it's not that linear. You don't write the first book and have it come out and then write the second book and have it come out. Like, a lot of things are crossing over. So I know that you were working on the second book before the first one came out and that kind of thing. But I was just curious, emotionally and just practically, like, how does that, oh my gosh, it's you essentially have this hit on your hands, and now your second book is going to come out, and all this sort of practical and emotional stuff related to the sophomore attempt, I guess.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah, it was terrifying and awful, and like there was a lot of tears and a lot of therapy involved. And so the timeline, sort of worked out that I sold The Charm Offensive to Simon & Schuster, Atria Books, back in June of 2020. So like 3 months into total lockdown, during the pandemic. And like as of debut author, I was kind of like, if I can only get a book deal, then like everything will be figured out and I'll never have problems again. And I sold my first book, and then my agent was immediately like, okay, we're not going to get edits back from Caitlin, my editor, for a couple months now. So what is your book 2? What are we writing next? And again, it was like 3 months into lockdown, and I had no ideas. Like, I felt creatively like completely dried up. I had nothing. And so my agent was like, okay, right now we have to like start writing book 2. And I just didn't even know where to start. And so with that kind of early part of the experience, that was really difficult. And like, this was way before I had any idea how people were going to respond to The Charm Offensive. Like, I hadn't even done developmental edits with my editor yet. It became a completely different book through that. I mean, not completely different, but it changed a lot throughout that process, as it does. And so in that early stage, it was a lot of insecurity where I was like, no one is going to read my first book. Why am I even writing a second book?
Yeah.
Like, I'm writing a second book that, like, what if it's a total bomb? What if it sells 10 copies? What if nobody but my dad reads it? And like, I just end up writing the second book for nothing. And then once, because it takes a really long time to write a book,
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to the point where people were reading Charm and people were responding to Charm really positively. And so that was kind of when that anxiety brain started saying, like, uh-oh, people like your
Yeah.
first book. What if they don't like your second book as much? What if they, like, what if they hate it? What if they turn on you and they don't read your third book? What if the things that people loved about Charm, you can never recreate? Because like, you can't really, like,
Right.
I think, yeah, there was a certain like emotional honesty that came with writing my first book. And so there was, I totally put so much pressure on myself with my second book.
I don't
And I
know
had
there's
to,
any way you can avoid that. Like, I know for myself, every time I sit down to write something new, I'm like, I don't remember how to do this. What if I can't do this anymore? So I know for me, like in the background, Charm comes, and I think I shared with you last time that Charm Offensive was the first arc I read as a new bookseller, and it was all very exciting. And then, I loved it. Everybody in the store loved it. Then, it came out, and there were so many people that were responding. So, just not just, hey, I like this book, but oh my gosh, this book means so much to me. And so, like, I'm having secondhand nervousness going, oh my gosh, I hope it goes well. And then I was going to read the second one. I'm like, I hope I like it, and I did. It was wonderful. And, but yeah, no, I've been thinking about that for you the whole time, of just like all that anxiety and just kind of like, oh my gosh, can I do it again? Because I think that that's pretty common for, I suspect anybody making anything, any artist, any scientist, any writer or musician or whatever, like, you have something that does really well, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I can, do this again. And so I wonder too how the experience of writing the second one was. I guess what I really noticed about the second one is the first one just captured so much. I don't know, there was so much love and there was so much acceptance, and I loved that. And those things are, I mean, I think that's probably just you and your work, and so those things are present in equal measure in Kiss Her Once for me, but it felt also a little bit more personal. And there's a lot of even though it's rom-com, which I don't know that I love that term, because I mean, it's sort of life, it's not, I certainly wasn't laughing all the way through, even though there's like good funny moments. But how do you approach thinking about like how much of you goes into any particular book, because there is some hard stuff in this book, and there is some stuff that's in this book that, whether it's from you or whether it's from people that you care about, like, it feels very personal. And how do you sort of keep that in the mix without making it so much you that, book reviews are too personal or whatever?
I mean, I think book reviews always too personal.
That's
like,
fair.
I don't read
That's
them.
true.
Like, I don't, if my like team sends me like a trade review, I read that. Or if like my dad, who is just like the most loving and supportive person, he has like very strict rules. He has to, like, before he can send me anything, he has to like read the whole thing and make sure there's nothing that is going, because like I'm a perfectionist, like, and that doesn't mean I think my work is perfect. That means that like it's really hard for me to sit with imperfections. And and with publishing a book, there's always going to be things that are imperfect and things that you wish you could change. So I just prefer not to see reviews. It's best for my mental health. But yeah, as we kind of discussed previously, when I was trying to come up with my second book, like, I'm not that creative. So I actually put a lot of myself into my books. I'm also like maybe a narcissist. So I feel like most of my characters, and a lot of their experiences like come from me. And I think a lot of times the parts that are not true to my own life are like embellished emotions that are true to my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so, yeah, I think for me, like it's hard for me, at least for right now, and at least for me in the genre of romance, like it's difficult for me to completely like extricate myself from
hmm,
characters. I feel like I have to put part of myself into the characters that I'm writing, in order for like it to work, I guess,
yeah, yeah,
for me, in order for the characters to feel real, because like all I know are my own thoughts. And so I'm like,
yeah,
well, we're just
yeah,
gonna run with it and
yeah.
see what happens.
Yeah, no, and I think one thing I was thinking of as I was writing down like, questions and things to talk about was I since I first read Charm, I think some of it for me was realizing, oh, I kind of like this genre. So I've read several since then that are, I think is it Janikowski? Is that how you pronounce his name? Timothy Janikowski's?
Oh, Janowski.
Yes, yes. And
Yes.
Alexis Hall and some of the other and I think one thing that I really noticed and was thinking about the characters, I both in Charm Offensive and Kiss Her Once for Me, was that I found myself feeling emotional connection, not just to the main characters. Like I called my daughter in the middle of the Kiss Her Once for Me and said, if everybody doesn't have a good ending, I'm gonna be mad. Like not okay, not there's a couple characters that you don't really want to have a good ending, and I won't say anything other than that. But like there's family characters, there's friend characters, and I think that it's really interesting to me how you're able to create not only main characters that feel fully fleshed out and that you deeply care about, but a lot of your side, there really aren't any sort of flat-ish characters that don't have a fully sort of fleshed out existence in the book pages. And I love that. And also I love that that you attend to them too, because that made my heart happy at the end. I'm like,
Okay.
everybody has to have a happy ending or I'm gonna be so mad. And I'm wondering if that's something that just comes naturally to you because like you were saying that you're putting that pieces of yourself in every character, or is that something that you give some pointed amount of thought to, or maybe both?
Um, Both. And then also this whole third thing where like when I start writing a book, I tend to have like way too many characters. I tend to start with just like a billion named characters that like you don't need to know about. In Charm, it was especially terrible because they were making a reality television show. And so
Yeah,
like I wanted to name like every like cameraman and key grip and like I tend to start with these like really like sweeping casts. Like I think I'm like George R. R. Martin or something. And then through both like I'm getting better at editing it through friends telling, my beta readers who read it and tell me to like winnow that down to like my agent, my editor. I end up usually having to kind of make the decision to like cut side characters who are flat, if that makes
right,
sense. And
yeah, it
so I
totally
think
makes sense.
often
Yeah,
what happens with my and I think I think there are some flat side characters in Kiss Her Once for Me that I wish like I would have loved to have like all the
yeah,
time to develop everyone. But I I think that a lot of it is just that I end up cutting so many people that I really have to know like why is this character essential to the
yeah,
story.
yeah,
Um and a lot of times characters are for me anyway feel essential to the story because they are like on some kind of parallel journey like with the main character. And so like in Kiss Her Once for Me, Andrew, so the main character is Ellie. She is like the Sandra Bullock type who agrees to this whole fake engagement, and the person she agrees to kind of fake marry is this man Andrew. And they're in a fake relationship, but they are not falling in love with them. She is in love with his sister. And so Andrew is this like side character who in a lot of ways is on a similar journey to Ellie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like by like looking at the ways in which he struggles with his journey, we kind of understand Ellie better. And so I think that can be really part of it. It's just like you're down to essential personnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it makes more sense that they're developed. But I think too, like the other thing is that like it is something that I am really like thoughtful about when I'm writing. And usually my side characters are absolute trash until like the last draft. Like it takes me because it takes me like a really long time to make sure that my main characters feel like fully fleshed out and like humans with flaws and desires and all of that. But then it takes even longer with the side characters. Like sometimes I'm like, this side character is literally only exists to deliver plot information, like, and I'm like, I don't know anything about them. And so that just comes from like conversations with my beta readers, usually a lot of conversations with my beta readers, to kind of make those more realized characters.
Yeah. Well, and you made the comment about having a couple characters that you wish you could have fleshed out more, but I think you have to have some flat-ish characters, because if everybody's fleshed out, then as a reader, your attention is maybe a little bit too broken up.
Yeah.
But I love that it's almost like reading a book where there's an ensemble cast, where you definitely have main characters, but there are important side characters that you care about as well. And I really enjoy that. And I really enjoy that they get to have some agency in the book. And so, yeah, I don't think you can eliminate flat characters entirely. And I honestly don't know that you would want to, because, you need some of them to fulfill certain roles in the story that are just a little bit more sort of background. And if you elevate them, then it doesn't really work quite as well. But yeah, it was fun. I do have a very serious question of, when are the grandmas going to get their own story?
I thought everybody would be like, write like Andrew and Dylan stuff, right? Like an Andrew and Dylan chapter. But all people care about are the grandmas. Like people just want like a grandma's like epilogue. Yeah. They just want more of them.
Oh, and Andrew and Dylan are great too, but those grandma characters, man, they were awesome.
Yeah, that makes me really happy. They're not really based like on my grandmas, even though I like gave them the first names of my grandmas. And but I had like a really close relationship with my maternal grandmother, and she passed away while I was writing this book. And so I liked the idea of like this like really like embellished, dramatized version of her.
That's awesome.
That kind of captures the essence of who she is. Yeah, she was.
Well, they definitely. Well, and I think that was it. Not only was it just fun, but we talk about this book being Christmassy, and there being certain, I don't think it's revealing too much to say there's certain Christmas traditions that go on in this book. And so I think having the generations be important people in the book made that feel more real. And so I think it added a lot to have the grandmas be important characters, and it sort of recalls a certain amount of the fairy tale formula is the wrong word, but having the wise side characters and stuff,
totally, yeah,
that were super great and also just totally awesome in their own right. But I love that people seem to be responding to them. That's very cool.
Yeah, people like love the grandmas. I feel like I talked about the grandmas more on like during my tour than anything else. So, which again, well, I love it. Let's
well,
go
maybe
for it.
If you do a bonus chapter for the next, when you're working on the marketing for the next book, it'll have to be a grandma's chapter instead.
Yeah. I would, yeah, it'd be super fun. Like I gotta actually write book 3 first, but yes.
Yeah, no.
I definitely,
We can let you do
no,
that first.
thank you. The thing that like actually will pay me. But yeah, no, I love that idea. And like I actually, the grandmas had, you kind of talked about with writing, that you can't bring every character to the foreground. And I had several more scenes in the book, in an earlier draft that brought the grandmas even more to the foreground. And my editor had me cut that, because she was like, there's too much.
Yeah,
You can only have
fair.
one
Yeah.
side love story, and that is, the story with Andrew. And so, yeah.
No, and that's the hard part, right? Because and I think that's the thing that, just side editorial note, because occupational hazard, but I think that's something that I notice when you're writing and then you've got to edit. Like, it's not always that you're cutting out bad stuff. Like, sometimes you're cutting out stuff that's really wonderful, but is not like tight to the core of the story. So, just save it for bonus chapters. That's okay.
Exactly. Love it.
Okay. So, fun question. Well, one more, like, I'm curious, why Portland? Is there any particular reason? I mean, proximity, obviously, and Portland certainly has a personality, but was there any other reasons that you chose to set it there?
Yeah. So when I was struggling to come up with an idea for my second book, like I was really profoundly struggling. And so I ended up like making a list of like my favorite like rom-com movies, because I was like, I'll just take one and make it gay, and like that will be my second book. And so I chose While You Were Sleeping, because like in that movie, Bill Pullman, like he looks exactly like a Portland butch lesbian, right? Like he just like like you could like walk anywhere in Portland
awesome.
and see that, like see someone that looks exactly like Bill Pullman. Like it's like floppy, like because he's 90, so it's like floppy hair, and he's got like flannel tucked into like light wash jeans and a Carhartt jacket, and it's just like so perfect, and like so queer. Like it's of course, like, and I think even in the 90s, it was pretty quintessentially queer, but not how they intended that to be.
No,
in the movie,
but it's wonderful.
it's just perfect. Like, and when I said that, like all of my queer Portland friends were like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, of course. How did I not see it before?" And so I was like, I'll set it in Portland. And it also seemed like I wrote my first book set entirely like not where I'm from. The characters are all over the world. And so I was like, I'll set this one a little bit closer to home.
Yeah. So if a real butch oven opened, what would they serve there?
Perfect.
I think you talk about that a little bit in the book, but I'm thinking like expanded menu options. What's going to be on the menu?
I mean, it's Portland, so it's pretty. So it's in the book, I guess, for people who don't. The love interest is Andrew's sister, whose name is Jack, because that is the name of Bill Pullman's character in While You Were Sleeping. And her dream is to like open a bakery. Like that is what she does. She's like worked, as a pastry chef in a bakery for a number of years, and she wants to open her own place. It's called the Butch Oven, which is like supposed to be a play on Dutch oven. But anyway, she obviously would serve a lot of like pastries. So you've got like all your kind of standard like American bread breakfast, right? You've got your croissants. You've got, this is revealing how little I actually know about pastries, but whatever. So like imagine normal things. Then I also imagine like some really interesting, like a French toast situation, with like apple, I don't know, like an apple French toast, and cinnamon, and like some delicious waffles with some kind of like compote that I couldn't even think of, but it's really good. And so I think a lot of that. And then of course it's Portland, so I'm sure like avocado toast is on the menu. I'm sure there's some kind of like some kind of like acai bowl. Yeah, exactly. For breakfast. But No, I think it's a lot of, I think like Jack's approach to cooking is not super pretentious. So I also just think there'd be
Yeah.
like a lot of really good pies that you
Yes.
could eat.
Mm.
Old fashioned, delicious, made with real butter pies.
Yeah. I imagine like big yummy cinnamon rolls and
Oh, yes. That
I'm like,
sounds
that's
so
what I
good.
want. Yeah.
That's what I want too.
That's awesome. It was just fun to I don't know if for those of you who've gotten your book, if you pre-ordered, you may have got, I don't have it with me, but you sent out those stickers with the little,
Uh-huh.
and that was with the little like Butch Oven logo and everything. And I was just like, okay, now somebody needs to do this because
I
it
know
sounds good.
it was so cute. I just asked, her name is Miracle Hine, and she is also a bookseller, who has like an Etsy store. And she had like designed some original stickers for the Charm Offensive. So I literally just like messaged her and was like, could you make this sticker for me?
Oh, that's
And so
great.
like, yeah, she did an amazing job.
Who did the art for the postcards? Was it the same person that did it for Charm Offensive?
So the postcards that I sent out with the pre-order campaign, which is like a picture of Jack and Ellie in Powell's City of Books, which is where they have their meet cute. That was done by an artist, Vanessa Kelly. You can find on Instagram under V Kelly Art. And they're just like an amazing artist just all
Yeah,
around. And
it's
they
a very good, it's a
yeah,
very fun image.
it's
Yeah.
so good. I'm so lucky that I had the chance to work with Vanessa. And they also have their own graphic novel coming out.
Oh,
They just
cool.
announced, yeah, the book deal for that. And so I'm very excited. Vanessa Kelly designed the end pages on the new collector's edition of Red, White, and Royal Blue. So if you've
Oh, okay.
seen,
Yes.
you have your hardback
Yes.
cover of Red, White, and
I
Royal Blue.
have.
All of those illustrations
Yeah,
are by Vanessa
that's
Kelly.
awesome. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that book went to daughter number 2. So that's like
Perfect.
her favorite book.
I love that book.
Yeah.
So
So we have a few minutes left, and I'm curious, like I know that your book 3 is announced, and I know you've talked a little bit about what it's about. And so if you could just share whatever it is that you're allowed to share, because I know not everything is sometimes there's certain things you can and can't say ahead of publication. So
yeah, I mean, so my third book, I pitched it to my agent back in like September of 2021. So when Charm was coming out, as my like sapphic road trip rom-com about death. And like my agent was like, so I was like, I know this sounds really wacky, like a romantic comedy about death. And my agent was like, I'm so here for it. Let's do it.
yeah.
And so it's about a road trip, and it's about two women. It also is initially set in the Pacific Northwest, but about two women who were childhood best friends, and then kind of through a series of circumstances became like rivals throughout high school, and are now both back in their small town working as high school teachers, and they're kind of forced together when their former high school English teacher tells them his dying wish. He's dying of pancreatic cancer, and his dying wish is to drive across the country from Washington State to Maine, and that he needs someone to do that for him, to take him back to Maine, so that he can pass away in this house that he has on the Atlantic coast there. And so, like, pretty grim premise, but it's
Yeah.
basically then just like these two women in a van with their old English teacher who is like dying, but is very like cavalier about it. Yeah, and then they just end up like wildly off track in terms of how they get from here to Maine.
That is, I am so excited.
Yeah, I really love
Like
it.
road trip is just you had me at road trip, but I do have to ask about the whole, it's the English teacher who's dying. Like, I hope there's that seems strangely morbid to the former English teacher, right?
I know, like I am a former English teacher. I know it also sounds narcissistic because I'm like, there's this old English teacher, and like his students love him so much that they're willing to do this for him. And so I was like, okay, like that's a bit much, but
yeah, it'll work. It's fine.
I think it does. And like,
yeah.
I think even in Kiss Her Once for Me, I say somewhere that like there is an indelible bond between like queer kids and their English teachers. And so in this, it kind of explores, yeah, why, and he is an openly queer teacher.
Yeah.
And so like the ways that he impacted them as they were growing up, and but also it's ridiculous and funny.
Yeah.
And then it's sad, but you know.
Yeah. Well, all of your books definitely have moments where you're like, this better work out. So,
Yes, I am quite, I'm quite angsty. And so, yeah, my comedies are not without their
yeah.
bummer moments.
Well, it just so you know, I think that it's not narcissistic and it actually is pretty true to life. We get to see all the people who come in to pick up the book after it comes out. And I get to chat with them and say, oh, usually I say something along the lines of, I really liked it. I hope you like it. And we had one person come in to pick up the book and they said, oh yeah, she was my high school English teacher. And then somebody calls from over the book stacks, are you talking about Cochrun? And this other, young 20-ish guy comes around the corner and was like, she was my high school English teacher too. So it was a very fun moment for us. So yeah, I think it definitely, and honestly, I had a high school English teacher was very influential on my life. And so I think high school English teachers, but just high school teachers in general, I think if you get one that you really connect with, that can be super meaningful to you for your whole life. So I love that. I love that the whole premise of the road trip and the teacher, and that'll just be really fun. So
yeah, it is really, and it's like writing about teachers, which like, as I was a teacher for 11 years, like I wanted to write about teachers, but I was also not ready really to write about school.
yeah.
So this is teachers on summer vacation.
Yes.
And so it's like about teachers, but more tangentially.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, the best part about being able to do in-person events this time, I mean, aside from connecting with all readers, is that at every in-person event I did, at least one former student came.
That's neat.
And I actually got to see quite
neat.
a few former students.
You were frozen up there for just a second. I'm just looking, Alison, because I had you're frozen up, but I'm trying to decide if it's my connection or yours, and I'm not sure. Oh, okay. It looks like we lost Alison, but we were about at the end anyway. So thank you all for joining us. And I hope that you had a good time listening to the event, and you can catch all the interviews from the past year. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary on the 11th, and you can catch all the interviews from the last year on our YouTube channel, and you can also purchase Alison's book in the store. So thanks for joining us and have a good night.